Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Venkat. We'll start the session in 2 minutes as most of the people have to join. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Venkat. So I'll be taking the session on architecting on AWS training. Uh, Everyone is being muted in this particular room to just avoid the disturbance and the background noise and everything. The last 15 minutes, I'll be allocating for the question and answers. In the meanwhile, if you have any kind of doubts or any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat so that I'll go through the chat regularly and I'll be keep answering your questions. Okay. So we'll try to understand today. Could be a first session where we will talk about the course outline, what we are going to cover as part of this particular course, and what benefit we would get out of this particular course. Then we'll understand cloud computing overview. Uh, we'll just have some basic overview about the cloud computing. Then we'll slowly move on to the AWS, and we'll try to understand what AWS will offer, what benefits we would get from the AWS. Then we will understand about the AWS certifications provided by Amazon and what certificate we are eligible and we can choose. Okay, and what is the best one to go with certifications. So as part of this course primarily is being designed for administrators who are working on Windows or a Linux or a database administration activities. Basically, who have a knowledge on the systems, network, storage, and authentication systems like an Active Directory, then backups, then email servers or notifications, like certain basically the people who are already working on infrastructure side. Okay, that's where the course is primarily focused on. So as part of this course, we will be understanding EC2, and AWS overview. So AWS overview is nothing but we will just talk about the what exactly AWS will provide and how do we basically interact with AWS and what are the availability regions, zones, edge locations, then the structure of AWS, and what are the requirements to create an account in AWS. Okay. So once we understand the basic overview about AWS, then we move on to the EC2. So which is nothing but basically virtual machines. Okay. So in the on-premises, so we're all working from last couple of years on virtual machines. So in AWS, we call that as EC2. So we'll understand how to create a virtual machines in AWS. So how do we interact with them? How do we manage the EC2 instances? That is nothing but virtual machines. Then we'll talk about ELB, load balancer. So when we want to make our application highly available, then how do we basically deploy the load balancer and what options are available on the load balancer? Then we'll talk about the notification system. So we want to send an email notifications to the users using an application, or we want to send an SMS text notifications. Then what options will be provided by AWS? Then we'll talk about CloudWatch. So the CloudWatch primarily talks about monitoring tool. So in on-premises, we will see a SolarWinds, ServiceNow, WhatsApp Gold, Genos, Nagios, like there are so many monitoring tools which are available. So in AWS, how do we monitor the utilization of resources? How do we monitor the event logs? Then how do we create an alerts, notifications? Okay. So then we'll talk about auto scaling. So the auto scale will talk about if the CPU utilization of a server is going above the an 80% or a 90%, then how can we add another instance automatically? If there are three machines, all the three machines are consuming 90% of CPU utilization and users are facing performance issues. So that's where we will look at auto scaling, that how we can automatically deploy the machines and add it to the load balancer. A Route 53, a DNS service. So how we can use AWS Route 53 and register our domains and distribute the traffic across multiple data centers using DNS, and how can we monitor the availability of the application by using the Route 53. Now we'll talk about S3 storage. So how we can store files in AWS, how we can share the files in AWS across the systems. Okay. Then we'll talk about networking. So how do we design network in AWS? So in the on-premises, we would see that server network, development network, production network, database network, application network, like there are so many networks which we would see. So how do we create networks in AWS and how we can connect our existing on-premises network with AWS network and secure the communication. Then we will talk about AWS IAM. So AWS IAM will talk about authentication, delegation of permissions, policies. So how we can delegate permissions, how we can create user accounts, how we can create policies, okay, how we can restrict the users to use only certain services of AWS. We'll talk about AWS tools. So the AWS tools will talk about like how we can cost optimize the AWS, how we can know the security incidents, how we can record the configuration changes. So how we can record the logs. Okay. So there are certain tools which is being provided, which is required for an infrastructure purpose and security purpose. So we'll talk about those tools. Then we'll talk about AWS server migration. So how we can basically migrate the virtual machines from on-prem to the Azure, sorry, AWS. And if you have a physical machines or a virtual machines available on the on-premises, then what options available to migrate to the AWS? And we'll talk about how do we plan it, how do we design, and how do we calculate the bandwidth requirements. Then we will talk about how do we do an analysis on the existing environment. Then we will talk about the migrating, copying the data from the on-prem to the AWS platform. So with this course, basically, if you're already working on a Windows or a Linux or some kind of database applications or any kind of an administration network, so whatever we are able to do it in the on-prem environment, we should be able to do it on the AWS, and we should be able to use it. Okay. So I will be demonstrating this as we go on, each and every options which are available service. So this training will goes with theory and practical. It needs a bit of additional study and practice from your side, okay, to clear an AWS exam. But if you can just practice this entire training during this particular course, okay, so you'll be able to comfortably work on AWS, okay, interact with AWS and understand the complete AWS components of it. Okay. Right. So before we go into that, we'll start understanding a cloud computing overview. So I'll not spend much time over here. So a lot of people are talking nowadays about a cloud, and we see that a lot of customers are already on the cloud. Now we would see something physical data centers. If you go back to the 2006 and before, we had physical servers, physical hardware devices like network, storage devices, servers, server racks, then we would see tape libraries, then backup devices. Like there are so many physical devices. So we used to call physical data center. Everything is physical. So one server, one application, one operating system. So that is basically the strategy which we used to follow in the physical data centers. One physical hardware server, on top of that deploy the operating system, then on top of that deploy the application like a WebLogic or a WebSphere or a SQL database or a Oracle database or SAP or an Oracle apps. Like there are few, like there are so many applications we would see, we used to install them. What is the challenge with the physical data centers? We see that requires a lot of space and a lot of investment we have to keep, and physical security, and they consume a lot of power, cooling, and other things. So the biggest thing is that it requires a lot of space. If I have 300 applications which are to be delivered, so roughly around, we need somewhere around 450 plus servers to 600 plus servers to deliver these applications. Now they consume a lot of physical space and they generate a lot of heat, due to which requires a cooling and power consumptions. Takes more time to delivery. The biggest challenge what we have seen in the physical data centers is that it takes a lot of time for delivery. What does that mean by it? Means if I want to deploy a new application into a data center, now if the application team says that he needs a server with a configuration of 4 processors with 16 GB RAM, now I have to go and buy that particular server from the hardware vendor, then has to get it delivered, then use it. It means that it takes a lot of time for interacting with the hardware vendor, getting it delivered and preparing and basically doing the changes. So typically 45 days of time at an average it will take to deliver one physical server in the data center. In some organizations, it may take more than that because we have to interact with the hardware vendor, then we have to place the order, then the hardware vendor has to deliver the server, then we have to prepare it, then give it to the application team. We would see that difficult to scale up or scale out. So the biggest challenges what we've seen in the physical is scale up or a scale out. When I want to add additional amount of RAM, then I have to shut down the server. And because of that, the application will have a downtime. Then I have to purchase the RAMs from the hardware vendor. And before that, I have to check whether the server has a capacity to upgrade or not. Like we would see that a lot of dependencies, and whenever I want to upgrade the server from a hardware perspective, it is a big challenge. And similarly, scale out. If I want to add one more server to an existing application, then again, it takes a lot of time because we need to procure it, then we need to get it delivered, then we have to prepare it, then we have to add it to the load balancer. Like there are sequence of steps which happens when we do it basically on the physical data center. So slowly we moved into the virtualization. So what we call it as a virtual data centers. So what does it mean by it? So we have the physical data centers, which is having a physical server, a physical storage, and a physical network devices. By using this physical, with the help of the virtualization software, so like VMware vSphere, Microsoft Hyper-V, Linux, KVM softwares, we started creating multiple virtual machines on a one physical server. So that's where we have seen a biggest advantage of something what we have seen called as the sharing of resources. Then we would see that faster delivery of resources. Then we would see that the data center space is less consumption. Like we would see that a lot of things which are basically came into picture, and because of that it becomes. So what happened with this one? With the help of the basically one physical server, on top of that we started creating the physical machines. Okay, so on top of a physical machine we started creating in virtual machines. So one physical server, we started running 20 virtual machines, 30 virtual machines, 40 virtual machines, which is equivalent to your 40 physical servers. So instead of having a small physical servers, we started buying a bigger capacity of an hardware. And on top of that, we started running more number of virtual machines. So which is acting like a physical machine. So each and every virtual machine will have its own hardware. Each and every virtual machine will have its own thing. So that way it becomes very easy for us. So with the help of this particular one, so I have a physical server. So on top of this physical server, we started putting basically small virtual machines. Small virtual machines. So instead of having a 10 physical servers of two processors, we started buying a physical server with a 20 process sets, a 20 process sets. And let's say I'm taking an example of a 128 GB RAM and within and 6 or a terabyte capacity of storage, which is SSD storage, fast performance storage. And we started deploying virtual machines. So now earlier there were 20 physical servers consuming the space. Now we have only one physical server consuming the space in the data center. And each and every virtual machine will have its own OS. So I can run Windows, Linux, and Ubuntu, Red Hat, whatever the Windows Server 2012, 2008, and 2016, and 2019. And that's where we have seen the benefits of this particular ones. Now, what is the other benefits what we would see from this particular one? Okay. The other benefits which we would see from this particular one is can quickly change, cost effective than hardware. Now, if I want to upgrade the RAM of a virtual machine, I can simply increase it. So I don't need to buy it. As long as there is a capacity available on the physical, I can simply buy it. I can simply add it. So within a lesser capacity of RAM, I can run more number of virtual machines. And think infrastructure as a software, just like a creation. Now, if I want to create a virtual machine, it hardly takes 5 minutes for me to deploy a machine up and ready in the data center. Okay, so easy to scale up out or out. So I want to upgrade the process from a 2 process to 4 process. Without shutting down the virtual machine, we can upgrade from a 2 process to 4 process. I want to upgrade the RAM from an 8 GB to 16 GB RAM. Without upgrading it, we are able to increase the capacity of a virtual machine. That way, the virtualization has given us a chance without having a downtime. We can add the resources and remove the resources. And we see faster deployment, 5 minutes. In 5 minutes of time, we have the machine up and running in the data center with operating system and respective applications which we would need it. And that is the reason why we started using virtualization heavily in the data centers. Then slowly we moved into cloud computing. Now, what makes the difference between a virtualization and a cloud? So in a simple, in a virtualization, we were more of talking about an virtual machine and where we were deploying the virtual machines. In a cloud, self-delivery, on demand. So whenever we need a resources, we can basically start delivering the resources. What does it mean by it in a cloud? So when I go to a data center, so we have a virtualization resources. So let's assume that we have a physical servers and storage capacity and networking, which is being virtualized. So when this being virtualized, on top of this, we are using something called as a cloud. The cloud will talk about on-demand delivery of resources. Whenever you need a resource, you go and create it. Whenever you need it, you go and create it. Which is in self-service. When I mean by self-service means, now database administrator wants a Windows server to test the service pack 2. Now in a production environment, he has a Windows Server 2016 running a SQL Server 2016, and Microsoft had released a Service Pack 2 for a SQL Server 2016. Now he want to test it before he deployed that Service Pack on the production environment. Now he's saying that he needs a server. Now what is happening in the cloud? The SQL or a database administrator has an access to the data center over the portal, that is over the web. He logs into the web portal, then he sees that deploy a Windows machine. Now he provides the details like the name of the machine, the number of processors required, the capacity of RAM required. Then he clicks on a submit. In 5-10 minutes of time, the server is up and running in the data center. So what is the advantage there? The database administrator need not to depend on the infrastructure team whenever he needs a server. Now, similarly, like in application teams, development teams, they want to test the servers, they want to test the application. So they'll be coming that every time they need servers and these things. That's where we see that the cloud becomes one of the called as the on-demand delivery. It could be resources like virtual machine, a storage, a network, a database, a load balancer, your backup, your authentication system. We call them as resources. Okay, with the pay-as-you-go model, we will talk about faster deployment. The one of the advantages of this cloud, what we see called as a faster deployment. In 5-10 minutes of time, we have a server up and running on the cloud, which can be accessible from anywhere of the corner based on the configurations, and which is a self-service. So the end user need not to depend on the data center team for creating, managing the machines. Now the database person want to shut down the machine and do some hardware changes, then you want to power it on. Now without depending on the data center team, he can power on the machine, power off the machine, change the hardware resources if required, and he can do some maintenance activities. Now, that is where we're calling it as a self-service. We are calling that as a self-service. So with the help of the cloud computing, we are able to provide on-demand, whenever is required, broad network access. Based on the network configurations, if a machine is being deployed in a cloud, it can be accessible from anywhere. Resource planning, the pooling, the cloud has a set of servers. It has like hundreds of servers, hundreds of storage capacity of terabytes of storage capacity. Then we would see that a network capacity, like whenever you need more capacity, you can basically add it. The cloud will have the capacity. As an end user, you're going to consume that particular services. Rapid elasticity. So what does it mean by rapid elasticity? So rapid elasticity is nothing but whenever you want to add it, you can add it. Whenever you don't want it, you can delete it. So I need 10 machines now. I can create it immediately. I want 40 machines. We can create immediately. Now my work is completed. I want to delete that 40 machines. I can delete it. That is where we would see that the cloud will provide some rapid elasticity and measured service. So we are giving an control to the users. We are giving an control to the users. We are giving control to the users. So what is that? I'm giving a control to the users so that they can create the resources. So when they can create a resources, now they can create a 10 resources, 20 resources, 30 resources. So in the data center, there should be a sufficient capacity available. Now we start monitoring, saying that how much capacity of resources you consumed, how many number of processors you consumed, how much capacity of RAM you consumed, what is the bandwidth you consumed, how much capacity of storage you consumed. Like we can have called as in many things over there. Okay, that is the basically an advantage of this particular one, where okay, measured service. The cloud will provide a measured service where we can monitor it. Right. So we would see cloud services like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. What does it mean by it? Means infrastructure as a service. Now, if I want to deploy an application, I need a server, I need a storage device, I need a monitoring application, I need a backup, I need a network connectivity, then I need a load balancer, then I need recovery services. Like there are so many components which is required for me to run an application. That is my infrastructure which is required. Now, as part of the cloud, as an infrastructure as a service, they provide an IT infrastructure over a web, that is over the internet, which is like your server, a storage, a network, load balancer, router, firewall, monitoring software, authentication software, backup, restoration, like database, like whatever is required to run your applications. What is the advantage of this? In a simple, I would say that cloud is something a rented house. As long as you are happy with that, you can use it. As long as you're not happy, you can just exit from there. Like I'd stay in a rent house as long as I'm happy there. Once I feel that I'm not comfortable, then I basically vacate that house and go. Similarly, in a cloud, it is a rental based. You are getting the servers on a rental basis. You're getting the storage on a rental basis. You're getting the network on a rental basis. As long as you are happy with that, you can use it. So the infrastructure as a service will provide you all the IT infrastructure which is required to run your applications. So we call platform as a service. So when we say a platform as a service, so one of the biggest advantage of a cloud is if I use it for 3 days, I pay for only 3 days. If I use for 10 days, I pay for 10 days only. So at any given point of time, I can disconnect. The moment I disconnect, the cloud will not be charged. And there is no upfront charges also. That means that you don't need to pay anything to the cloud provider upfront. Okay. As we see platform as a services, the platform as a services will talk about an application which is deployed, ready to use with the minimal administrative controls. So I have a SQL Server. So I can use a SQL Server from cloud provider where I don't need to maintain the license of the SQL Server database, patching of the database and everything. where the cloud provider will take care of it. I more create my database security, and managing that particular ones will be done by the customer. We see a software as a service. In a software as a service, it is an end-to-end software is being delivered on a rental basis. Now we have an SAP software. I want to use SAP Finance. Now I need to buy a server, then I need to buy a software, then I need to deploy it, then I need a connectivity, then I need to buy the licenses of the SAP and everything. Now what happens in a SaaS model is I get SAP's finance software on a rental basis. I don't need to maintain the SAP software. I don't need to do a patching of this SAP software. I don't need to be responsible for backup, restoration of that software. I am not responsible for availability. I am only a consumer of that particular software. I only consume that particular software. That is the biggest advantage of that. We don't basically pay anything upfront, but I get a software on a rental basis. So now, because we see Microsoft Azure, we see AWS, like Microsoft 365, Google Cloud, then we would see Salesforce, like Oracle apps, like there are so many cloud providers available now. Now, each and every cloud providers are being classified themselves that, okay, some cloud providers will provide IaaS, some provide will IaaS and PaaS, some cloud providers will provide SaaS based on their application to the applications. That's where we would see that this one will be. Right. So we call cloud models. What is this cloud models? We call something like a public, hybrid, private. The public cloud is something provided by external party where we can consume the cloud services like infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. What is an example for it? You have a Ola and a Uber. So Ola and Uber are providing a transport system. So they have a cabs. So drivers are there, cabs are there, and everybody is available. So you have to consume it. Now the Ola or Uber will take care of the transport system. We as a consumers, that is public, anybody can consume the services of Ola and Uber. But what is the challenge with that is I don't have an basically control on the transport system. As long as I'm able to use it, I'll use it and I'll pay for usage. So whenever I have a requirement, I'll basically use the services of Ola or Uber and wait. Similarly, this public cloud providers who are going to do business with cloud, we call them as a public cloud providers or public cloud. Anybody can consume it. So I can also set up my own cloud. I can say public, so my customers can start using it. We see private. Private is simple that an organization is having a transport system and having their own vehicles and drivers. Now, instead of consuming the services of Ola or a Uber, the organization is having their own drivers, cabs, whatever the vehicles, and they are managing the entire system of transport. Now, they're only the employees of that organization can only use that particular transport system, but external people cannot use it. That is the reason why we are calling that as a private. Now, my organization is very huge. Now, I don't know, every day there are 10 to 15 requests which I'm getting it that they need a servers, they need capacity, they need storage. Like there are so many requests which are coming in. Now, how do I automate it? That's where I'm going for a public private cloud, so that I establish a private cloud and give it to my own customers, that is my users. Let them log into the cloud and create their own resources, deploy their own resources. So what is the advantage in a private is then I still have a control on the data and I'm responsible for end to end. In a public, I'm not responsible for maintenance of the transport system. If a car breaks down or something happens to the transport system, I'm not responsible for it. Someone else is going to take care of it. But in a private, when the organization is having their own drivers and cabs, if a driver doesn't turn up, and the organization has to face it and do it. Similarly, in a private cloud, the organization is responsible for end-to-end setup of a cloud infrastructure delivery management. Whereas in a public cloud, someone else will do it. Only customers can consume it. In a private, only the organizational users only consume it. Now we have a hybrid. So what happens with a hybrid? A lot of people, organizations have some security applications. So I cannot keep everything on the public cloud. So I have an application running in financial data or in human capital data or some kind of a confidential data. So which I cannot keep it on a cloud. And we have a project where we want to have the servers. Now we don't have a capacity in the on-premises. Now I need a 6 servers to be delivered. Now instead of buying them, I can go and basically get it from a public cloud, which is like AWS, and deploy my applications and do it. Now what happens here now? Partially I'm using my existing infrastructure, which is my existing cloud. And partially I'm using it in a public cloud, which is your AWS. That is where we're calling it as a hybrid. It is basically a partially, which we are using the in cloud in the on-prem, and which we have established a connectivity to a public cloud provider like AWS. And partially we are using the infrastructure in AWS, and partially we are using it in on-prem, which we are calling that as a hybrid cloud. Okay. Right. So that's where we would see the cloud. Now let's understand AWS. What does this AWS will do that? So we call Amazon Web Services is basically a cloud computing platform. So which is primarily a public cloud, which provides infrastructure services and platform services. So now this AWS will provide an infrastructure which is required to run your applications. And provides the platform services like a database services, managed big data services, where we don't need to be responsible for the entire things. Certain portion of that can be taken care by the AWS. And which is in having a data centers across the geographical locations. Now there are customers in India, there are customers in US, there are organizations in UK, there are organizations in Europe, there are organizations in Middle East, there are organizations in Africa. Now the organizations which are in India, they want to use a cloud which is available in India because my network latency will be less and I can meet the security compliance requirements, and my users can have the better experience because of the network latency. Now I would prefer any cloud vendor who provides me a server on a rent basis in India rather than US. Similarly, The customer in US, the organization which is in US, they prefer to have their servers in the local geographical region because of the network latency, security and governance regulatories and everything. Now what AWS has did is they have a data center spread across various geographical regions. So they have data centers in US, UK, US, Europe, India, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, like Africa, like they've expanded everywhere so that the organizations can choose the nearest data center and deploy their own resources over there. So I want to create a server. Instead of creating a server in a US data center, I deploy it on the Indian data centers. So that is the biggest advantage of this. Public cloud, anybody can consume it. There's no restrictions. As long as you are providing a valid email ID, a valid mobile number, a valid credit card, that to verify that you are the authentic user, then you can start consuming it. So that is the, again, benefit of AWS. Roughly around, we would see that the AWS is basically the first organization to come up with the cloud and demonstrate it to the world that it works fine. And demonstrate it to the world that it works fine. And that is where everybody followed AWS. And they're basically global leaders. Pay as you go model. So the biggest advantage of this cloud is a pay as you go model. What does that mean by it really? I want a server. I can go and create a server in a cloud, but upfront, I don't pay anything. After the end of the month, based on the consumption, I will pay. It's just like your postpaid bill connection or a postpaid mobile connection. So what happens in a postpaid? We keep consuming it. How much we consume it at the end of the month or a billing cycle, the provider is going to generate an invoice, a bill, and we pay for that. So here also in a cloud, based on the consumption, you pay it, but upfront we don't pay anything. So that is the good thing about the AWS or any cloud provider. Now, what does AWS will provide? As we said, infrastructure as a services and a platform as a services. What is this infrastructure services? You need a compute, that is your server. You need a storage. You need a network. You need a monitoring. You need a backup. You need an authentication system. You need an email sending notification, SMS gateway, disaster recovery, a network, load balancer, firewall, and application gateway. Okay. Like we would see that we need a lot of components required for infrastructure. Similarly, we look at an platform as a services like Oracle database, SQL database, MySQL database, like a lot of applications which is required, which can be managed. Now, AWS will provide, like there are roughly around 150 plus services are being offered by AWS. Now it is again classification. Okay, I'll explain that. Now, like compute, where you create a virtual machines, then a storage where you get a storage capacity. Then you have a database where you can create a databases. Then you can see called as a migration services, networking, developer tools it provides, management tools it provides. Like you want to run some kind of a media services, then it will provide. The security, identity, and compliance. Okay, like they have roughly around 150 plus services are being offered. The question comes here now, do I need to know everything? Now let's go back to the our on-prem. Now as of now, we're all managing a server environment or a network or a storage platforms. Now I'm an administrator. I need a server. I need to know how the storage should connect, network connect, authentication, and monitoring and these things. Now there is a Oracle database administrator. He need to know the Oracle database application. He doesn't need to know the networking. He doesn't need to know the authentication. He doesn't need to know the server operating system because he is responsible for a database. So he is more concerned about the database perspective. Similarly, we would see an Oracle apps or an SAP administrator. Now he needs to know the more of the SAP application and SAP, how it runs on a Windows server. Similarly, in AWS, the system administrators, the network administrators or storage administrators will be more focusing on infrastructure as a service components where they need to know it. And if basically a database administrators or these people, they need to know more about a respective platform, like a platform as a service, which is related to that particular application. Okay. So what AWS has? AWS has something, a global infrastructure, which basically availability zones, regions, and edge locations. We will understand in the next class. What this is your physical infrastructure, data centers. So as I just now told that there are data centers in US, UK, every region, or we call every geographical area. We call them as a global infrastructure. So on top of that, we would see a foundational services. The foundational services are like compute. It means that these are the basic services which are being provided by AWS in any of the data centers, which is like EC2 and Scalo, to scale, load balancer and everything. It provides like a storage, S3 and EBS storages, and databases like RDS and simple DB services, and we see networking. So these are the foundational services, means that in each and every data center, they'll have this minimum services are being offered as a backup. On top of that, we see application services, platform services. The platform services are respect to the applications, Java application or a Python application, email service, like many things which we would see that are available. Okay, then we would see that management and authentication, which we comes into that, how the users can authenticate, how we can control the security, and how the users can interact with the cloud, that is your web interface. Then monitoring that, how we can monitor the utilization of resources, the activities of the users, then a notification, that to sending out an email notification, alarms, a deployment and automation, that how we can basically automate the deployment of the infrastructure or resources in cloud. So he provides a lot of resources around that. Right. So what are the benefits of this AWS? Pay only for what you consume. Pay only for what you consume. So you use it for 1 day, you pay for 1 day. Use it for 2 days, you pay for 2 days. You use it for 3 days, you pay for 3 days. Use it for 2 months, you pay it on a month-on-month basis. Low pay-as-you-go prices, basically compared to the other vendors, could be certain services are lesser price, eliminating guessing on our capacities. What is this mean by it? Earlier, if you want to buy a server, we used to think about that. What is our requirement for the next 3 years? Today, my users are 1,000 users. So I'm expecting another 3,000 users in the next 3 years. It means that I have to buy the hardware in such a way that it can handle the next 3 years requirement. So I have to plan in such a way that what is happening with the cloud? Today I'll start with minimal. I'll start with a basic minimal server of a 4 process with a 16 GB RAM. If that is not sufficient, I can upgrade it anytime. I can upgrade it anytime. So I can add it. So you don't need to bother about your feature requirement. Currently, what is required, you allocate it. When it's not required, just decrease it. If you want more, add it again. Now you don't need to bother about your hardware resources capacity because the cloud will allows you to do a scale up or a scale. So increase delivery speed and agility. Fastest delivery. In 5 minutes of time, you have a server up and running in the data center, which can be accessible across the globe. That is your world. If someone is saying that, can you please deploy a Windows machine and give it me access? It hardly takes you for you to do is a 5 minutes in the cloud. The faster delivery of resources. So stop sending money on running and maintaining data centers. The good thing is in small customers. Now the biggest problem with this one is in I have a one ERP application. Now I need 2 servers, 1 firewall, 1 network switch, 1 backup device. Now in order to maintain these servers, I need a small data center. Then I need 2 ACs to run on 2 different ships. Then I need a redundancy internet connectivity. Then I need a redundancy backup. Like we would see that so much of investment is required. And top of that, the maintenance is again additional burden or headache because so ACs, we have to monitor whether ACs are running or not. We have to monitor whether the power consumption, does the servers are being consumed or not consumed, like a lot of things which we have to do it. So what is the advantage of AWS is that we don't need to bother about running data centers. We can go simply and use the data center, which is being built by AWS and where we can run our applications. Go global with minutes. So you want to scale up. Now you have an application. Now your business is in India. So you deploy, you consume in the India. Now you're expanding to the US. So you want the application also to be available in US. You don't need to set up the data center in US because AWS is already having a data centers in US. I simply go there and consume it. If you want to scale my business across the globe, by using the AWS data centers, I can scale up. Because I don't need to set up physically anything. Earlier, we used to say that, okay, I want someone to be available there physically, then we have to do something, okay, organize and everything. But today with this one, we don't need to do anything. That is the biggest advantage of using this one. So if I use an on-premise, so we need a physical space, cabling, then power, cooling, networking, server racks, network racks, then UPS, then storages, okay, then certifications which comply with the data centers like an ISO 27001, BS400. What is the advantage with the cloud computing is then You don't need all these things because they're all being maintained by AWS. I simply go and start consuming it. I don't need anything there. So no long-term contracts. What is that no long-term contracts? If I use it for 1 day, I'll pay for only 1 day. If I use it for 10 days, I'll pay for only 10 days. If I use it for 60 days, then I pay for only 60 days. There is no agreement between the AWS and the customer saying that I have to use these services for a minimum of 1 year or 2 years, nothing like that. As long as we need it with that, no contract, no agreement. Okay, that is the beautiness of this particular one. Now, so as of now, we see that AWS has the data centers in US, and as we see Europe, UK, and as we would see that in China, India, and basically Middle East, and Australia and Southeast Asia, and in South Africa, and we would see basically called as Mexico or basically this South America region of it. Okay, they are expanding. It means that they are adding these data centers across the globe. So as of now, the ones which we see in a blue color are already established. The ones which are there in a red color have been coming up. And still few more are coming up in Africa region. So they are basically started adding up more data centers so that the customers who are available in that specific region can start consuming the services from that particular data centers. Now, shared responsibility. What does this mean by it? Now we think that everything will be managed by a provider. Now, what is the security now? Who's taking it to take care of security? When you're deploying a virtual machine, who is going to provide the login credentials? Now, we feel that now everything we are deploying AWS means AWS is not responsible. There is a responsibility of AWS, and customer is also responsible for certain things. Now, AWS is responsible for physical infrastructure availability in the data center. That is your global infrastructure. So he has to ensure that the physical data center is secure and highly available. Then on top of that, foundational services, the physical servers, the storages, the database applications, and network connectivity is up and running. That is the responsibility of the AWS. Now he is providing an SLA saying that 99.9% uptime on the infrastructure. Now he has to ensure that 99.99% is available. That is the responsibility of the AWS. Now security of the cloud, the physical security, the server, the physical server security, the physical storage device security is being taken care by AWS. When it comes to the customer, I'm creating a virtual machine. Now I'm responsible for the OS application maintenance. OS security, application security, I'm responsible for it as a customer. So now customer is responsible for platform, applications, identity and access management. Now customer is creating a user account for one of his employee and giving a password as 1234. Now it is the responsibility of the customer to ensure that the user has the the strongest password and security. Now the customer has created a Windows server and given a password as a password for administrator of account in the cloud virtual machine. Now AWS is not responsible for it. Now the customer is responsible for the security of the application and configuration of the application, operating system, and other things. Like operating system, network, and firewall configurations is the responsibility of the customer. Customer has to do that. Then we would see client-side data encryption and data integrity. Now, AWS is providing you features in such a way that if you are uploading any kind of a data, it is being encrypted and stored so that not even AWS engineers cannot read that data until your authorization. So now it is a responsibility of the customer to enable that features and start securing the data. Okay. Network traffic protection. I created a virtual machine assigned a public IP. Now I have opened all the ports. Now AWS is not responsible for it. AWS is given a public IP and a machine. Now securing that particular machine from a network by having a firewall and everything, it is a responsibility of the customer. So for the customer level issues or this thing, customer is responsible, and for an infrastructure which is being provided by AWS, AWS is responsible for it. So all these physical data centers, so they have been set up in a not descript facilities. Physical access is strictly controlled by multiple pass, two-factor authentication, multiple factor authentication to enter into a data center. Physical access is being logged and audited. All the physical access who is entering into the system is being controlled. Software network, systematic change management. Basically, whenever they are upgrading these physical servers or infrastructure, phased updates deployment. Now, any changes which are happening to the data center, which happens in a phases, and self-storage, safe storage decommission. We know that the life of a storage device is 5 years. After that, I can still use it, but my data resiliency is something question mark, because the hard disk are being using from its 5 years, which is doing a read-write operations which have some impact on the data loss. Okay, automated monitoring and self-audit. This physical hardware devices and everything is being self-monitored, basically are monitored and self-audited automatically in self-healing mechanism. Advanced network protection system has been implemented. And all these data centers provided by AWS are ISO 27001 certified. It means the physical infrastructure of the AWS is being certified ISO 27001. And you can also basically, these are also comply with these standards like HIPAA compliance, FISMA compliance, PCA standards. Because if you want to run some kind of a financial application, so that data center should be PCA compliant. If there is some kind of an application which is need to comply with HIPAA, then I need to put that application in the data center, which is comply with HIPAA. Now these AWS data centers are also already complied with these certifications, where we don't need to again apply for these certifications. We may need to configure the settings of the AWS data center to meet our compliance requirements. Okay, that is again advantage. And the AWS will provide us certain kind of tools wherein we can audit ourselves, saying that, okay, how do I comply with the data center? What are the security weaknesses which are available? And where do I need to tighten the security? Where do I need to loosen the security of it? So risk and compliance white paper, basically the AWS will provide us, we can generate it anytime, and we can basically check the compliance reports. I want to verify that how do I comply with the HIPAA, what status? Now, am I 100% comply with the HIPAA, or am I 80% comply with HIPAA? What are all not configured to meet the HIPAA compliance? At regular intervals of time, we can have the compliance checked, verified, and we can take the report out of that. Okay. Right. Let's understand from a certifications, what certifications available. And as we would see that there is a lot of confusion around the AWS or any cloud. Now, what is the problem here is then in on-premises data center, we say always a server guy is responsible for physical server maintenance and virtualization responsible. We see always a network person is responsible for the physical network and network connectivity, virtual network. We always say in on-premises, the security person is responsible for firewalls, antivirus, anti-spam, and all the security controls. Similarly, we would see that the respective people are responsible for respective things. What is happening in a cloud? It is the same. It is the same. There's no difference. In AWS also, the network administrator will perform the network activities. The system administration team will carry out the system activities. The backup team will perform the backup activities. The database administrator will perform the database activities in the cloud also. It means that the roles of the existing is not being replaced with the cloud. What is being replaced in a cloud is only the infrastructure part. Only infrastructure part. So we can, instead of having a physical servers, I'm taking from the cloud, that's it. I'm taking from the cloud, that's it. So the rest of the activities are the same. Now, who is going to do a maintenance of the OS? Customer has to do it. That is, a Windows administrator has to do it. A Linux administrator has to do it. Who is going to take care of a database application? AWS will not take care of your database application maintenance. Your database administrator is going to take care of the application. That is where in AWS also, as we would see, the architect, developers, and operations and specializations. The architect more often basically people who are basically providing solutions that how to use the features of the AWS and what feature should be used in which particular kind of a situation. Now we would see that a foundational, associate, and professional. The foundational, like cloud practitioner, which is basically you can just take this exam and will be called as a cloud practitioner with a little bit of knowledge on the AWS cloud. Either an architect or a developer or an operations or like service desk team or help desk team, they can do that. Then we would see an associate. So associate is on top of that. Okay. What does this mean by associate means? So it's basically the intermediate level of certification for an architect developers who are developing the applications and putting onto the marketplace of AWS. I'm day-to-day operations, system administrators, Linux administrators, database administrators, and network team, or whoever is basically involved in the day-to-day kind of an operations. Basically, we call them as an operations. Now, the operations people can go for an AWS certified SysOps administrator, and developers can take called as a certified developer associate. And people who are basically going into the architecting, they can go into the architects of it. So we will be covering in this course a combination of solution architect and SysOps. Okay. And people who are into the automation and DevOps people, so they can go into the professional course called as a professional certification called as a DevOps engineer professional and certified DevOps engineer professional for a developer. Then we would see architect, we call them as a solution architect professional advanced. Okay. So it all depends. Now, on top of that, there is a networking, advanced networking specialty, big data, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There are so many specializations are available because we see that machine learning, big data, still we have this in on-prem. A big data engineer is responsible for managing the big data. A network administrator is responsible for managing the network. In a cloud also, the individual owners are responsible for managing the individual things, but the way which we manage an on-prem and cloud is bit different. That's it. It's bit different. Rest, everything is the same. In on-prem, I might be deploying a virtual machine, then provide an access to the RDP to the customer or to the user. So in the on-prem, I might be interacting with the VMware vSphere or Microsoft Hyper-V. In a cloud, what happens? I want to still deploy a virtual machine, but I don't interact with the vSphere or a Hyper-V. I interact with the cloud portal and performance. So the way which we are going to do operations is something different. Manage is something different. But the kind of activities which we do in the on-prem will still exist in the cloud. Right. So I'll just give a permissions to unmute, okay, and we will take a questions. Okay, so we can have the yeah, if anyone has a questions, you can unmute yourself and you can ask it. So in the AWS, they are using a Linux-based hypervisor, which is been customized. Okay, and we don't have access to any of the hypervisors in the backend. Okay, so the Linux-based hypervisor, which they call it as a Zen and KVM, which are going to be used by AWS.
Hi. So what is the duration of this course?
This goes for 1 month, daily 1.5 hours. It goes for 1 month, 4 weeks.
Okay, so Monday to Saturday, right?
Monday to Friday it will be.
Friday, okay.
Okay.
So can we get practical exposure as well during this course period of
Yes,
this course?
yes. I will be demonstrating it. Okay. You can
Okay.
do the labs offline. You have to just, I'll help you in setting up the trial account. I'll explain you that. So you'll be able to do it. Okay. Comfortably, if you can just practice it for a period of 45 days of time, then I would say that you are comfortable to handle the day two operations. Okay, like in whatever L2 engineer which we are going to do it, we can comfortably do it with this course.
So you will create an instance and you will give the credentials to us so that we can
No, no,
practice.
no, 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 no. You have to create your own.
Oh,
And
okay, okay. We had to buy, we had to purchase, and so that we can use your documents or lab documents or
yes,
whatever that they use. Oh, yeah, got
exactly.
it, got it.
Right, right,
Okay, okay.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, yes. Yes.
Hi, actually, we have the administration part domain. So, does it require any programming language for this? Like,
No, not required. For this course, it's not required. When we go to the next level, which is in DevOps, it is required. But for this course, administration is enough. No coding is required.
oh, okay, okay. Thank you.
So hi, will we get any documentation or recordings for this?
Yes, that you have to coordinate with the, I think whoever is basically coordinating, you have to talk to them.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So the course will start at 7, right? 7 to 8:30.
Yes,
The
7
training
to
will start.
8:30. Yes, yes, 7 to 8:30.
So are we covering with the DevOps concepts also?
No, in this course, we don't cover it.
Okay.
Do we get any Linux fundamentals like in this training?
Oh, no. Okay, this does not require any Linux or anything. Okay, that is only the perception what people will have it, that I need to know the Linux. Okay, you are a Windows administrator, you're still responsible for Windows servers. A Linux administrator is responsible for Linux, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So the roles will simply rely the same. So either a Windows or a Linux administrator, both can they work. Okay.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
what will be the duration for this AWS architect
It'll be for
course?
1 month. This course will go for 1 month. Okay, that is 4 weeks.
It's complete online
Complete online only.
and charges.
Okay.
What will be charges?
No charges. You are free to attend this training for this entire 1 month of time.
So this is initially initiated for 3 days. As
No,
per
no, 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 no. This complete course is free for 1 month.
at the end of the training, after practicing, then I can go for the exam.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I need to contact the Chiranjeevi.
Yes, yes, correct.
Okay, okay. I will talk to her.
Okay.
So Venkat, so is it going to be the same Zoom link for all the for the whole period, or how does that go?
No,
I mean,
no. The link will be the same for the entire duration.
okay, we just need to join every day, Monday to Friday.
Yes, yes.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, correct, exactly. The link will not change for the entire period of duration. The link will remain the same.
Hey
Thank you
Venkat,
so much. Rakesh.
Yeah, please.
hey Venkat, what is the reason for giving this training free? Is there anything that?
There's nothing like that. We just want to promote the quality of our training. Okay. And that is the overall motto of it.
Okay, so is your company also doing placement or only training?
No, we do only training. We don't do any placement.
Okay, thank you.
Actually,
Sir,
so
one
glad
question.
it's been a great opportunity to us to learn for the entire month for free course.
Yes, yes.
Thanks a lot, Venkat.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Is there any other timings available, trainings?
No, AWS is only 7 to 8:30 morning.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, one question, sir.
Yeah, please, you can.
Sir, as you mentioned, after this training, we would be able to, learn or do it like a L2 level.
Mm.
Right now, right now we are working as Windows or Linux segment.
Yes.
To go to attend interviews, generally they will ask like real-time questions. What are you doing? What kind of activities you are doing? And suppose if you get this issue, how you resolve? That kind of information or anything are you going to provide?
Yes, yes. This training is going to be going to cover you from the day-to-day activities which you're going to perform, and your interview questions, okay, your design patterns also, it will be covered to certain level, okay. Only thing is then you need to practice it, okay. By listening to my classes, maybe for next 3 days, you may be able to remember the today class. After that, you'll forget, okay. So only thing is then you have to keep practicing it. At the end of 45 days of time, I would really feel that you yourself can basically talk, okay, that, okay, I know something good about AWS. I can speak at least, okay. You can talk about those things.
So Venkata, after giving this like a full course and we are just we can give the associate exam.
Yeah.
So is there any way we can give the professional exam, or there is mandatory to give the associate exam?
Association is mandatory. Then only you can go for a professional. So
Okay.
without completing the associate, you cannot go to the professional.
Okay, thank you.
For associate certification is for the charges, right?
Sorry.
For associate certification purpose, it will be
$150 is the fees for the associate certificate that you can basically register in any of the Pearson certification centers. Then you can do that actually.
And what about the professional? Even the professional is $150, is it?
Professional is also $150. Professional is $300.
Okay.
Okay. Associate is $150 and professional is $300.
And the validity is for 1 year or 2 years?
No. It is more 3 years is the validity. Okay, because the problem with the cloud is they keep changing it. Okay, the biggest challenge with the cloud is and whatever we see today after 1 year, there are certain small changes are coming up every here and there. 6 months we see that small changes are very huge in the cloud. But they say that the maximum is in 2 years, 2-3 years is your certification validity.
Okay. If the associate certificate is getting expired, what should we do? Like we have to renewal, or we should go and do professional certificate?
No. So if it's getting associate is getting expired, okay. If it says that it's there's no more valid, means again you have to write the associate exam to retain your certificate.
Okay, so it will be $150 once again.
Again, yes, it will be $150 again once again.
Get for class, same link every day we have to use, or different links we are sending?
The same link, people can log in. Okay, click on the same link every day. It will be the same link.
Okay, as a weekdays totally.
Yeah, weekdays only, Monday to Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any limited attempts like that while writing for associate exam?
No, nothing. You can write a number of times. Okay, anytime you write, you have to pay $150. That's it.
Hello, sir. My name is Raghu.
Yeah,
and from Hyderabad. So I just wanted to know if you are the one who would be dealing PowerShell as well as Azure also.
Yes.
Okay, fine. That has answered my question. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. This is Madhavi.
Yeah,
So,
Madhavi.
I'm from Hyderabad. Is AWS certification is enough to get a job?
Certification is not a mandatory to get the job, but only thing is in as long as you can prove that you have the competent skills. What I would suggest you is in if you can just extensively spend daily 2 to 3 hours of additional time on practice in AWS, that's more than enough. Okay, as I was saying that you will comply with the day 2 operations, that is your L2 activities. Okay, now certificate is something that we are going to add an additional cap. Okay, I'm saying that I'm an AWS certified. Okay, it just has a value. So, but it cannot simply get you a job until you're technically qualified.
For example, if I don't have an experience, can I get an AWS job with the certification?
Yes, you can, but you have to practice a lot. You need to have knowledge on Windows administration. So only with AWS, it is not. So people will prefer either you have with Windows with AWS or Linux with AWS or big data with AWS or your, I would say, database with AWS. Like what is your specialization in AWS?
Me too.
Okay.
Venkat, if a person would like to get into a solution architect, what would be a prerequisite? Because most of the openings I'm seeing, like they require candidates who are in that position itself as a solution architect.
There is basically, I would say that there is an industry misconceptualization on AWS, because people still want to do a day-to operations. They are also saying that we need a solution architect. Okay. That is the reason why everybody says a solution architect, but when we go into the inside of it, we talk about day-to operations. But as part of the solution architect, okay, you need to have a good knowledge on networking. You need to have a good knowledge on security. You need to have a good knowledge on applications, how they work, to be working on as a solution architect, because you are going to provide a solution around an application, right? So you need to know all these things. Okay.
Hi, this is Rajesh from Hyderabad.
Yeah, Rajesh.
So my question is, among the cloud platforms, I can say like differentiating Amazon, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud is also in the cloud prices now. So which will be a add-on advantage or a overwhelming thing to learn among these three?
See, AWS is basically market leader. Okay, so most of the customers are using an AWS and strongly competing by Microsoft. Microsoft is growing. Okay, in the last 4 to 5 years, the Microsoft cloud has grown up like anything. Okay, and Google Cloud is very less. I would say it hardly has a market stake of 4 to 5%. Okay, whereas these two providers, Azure and AWS, yes, competitively they are basically doing good, and anyone is also good. Okay.
So if we learn AWS, then we can easily manage the other Azure or the Google GCP, right?
Right. Concept is the same. Terminological differences are there.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Okay.
And do you also offer the AWS professional training as well?
No. As of now, no.
Okay. Associate only. Okay. Thank you so much, Venkat, for arranging this one.
Yeah, thank you. Okay,
Yeah. Shall we get the day-to-day topics in the email, whatever you covered? Like
that you have to check with Chiranjeevi. Okay, you can just mail her. She will basically reply. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vikant.
Thanks.
Thank you, Venkat.
Thank you.